And our UK correspondent Jonathan Sacerdoti joins me there from London. Jonathan, thanks for being with us today. The UK government has really come under some criticism for its policy of pursuing herd immunity, and today they're announcing a new communications policy. Bring us up to speed there.
Well, that's right, Sarah. You heard their Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, defending the government's position. And they've maintained throughout all of this period of emergency measures that they are following scientific advice, that they're taking the advice of the official scientists advising the government and acting according to that. But there's been plenty of criticism because that's seen them acting, in many people's eyes, too slowly. They haven't banned public gatherings. They haven't cancelled schools and universities. In many ways, they've been suggesting to carry on life as close to normal as possible. And then there was some talk, as you said, about herd immunity. And that's alarmed many people through a misunderstanding that they believe the government wants them to catch COVID-19, which Matt Hancock was very clear to state over the weekend is not the case. It's a scientific concept, he said, but not a government policy. So now, in order to try to clarify any misunderstandings in this age of extremely fast communication between citizens themselves, the government is announcing that they'll have daily briefings, which will be live from either the Prime Minister or cabinet ministers, in order to keep the country fully up to date and to allow them to be interrogated on their plans.
And Jonathan, also concerned within the government regarding the UK's lack of ventilators and also critical care beds. Tell me, what are they doing about it?
Yes, Mr. Hancock also was challenged over the weekend about those points, because the UK does have, per person in the UK, a relatively low number of intensive care beds in hospitals. And this is now going to be a critical number, because with more and more people suffering from COVID-19, and some of them, particularly in the more at-risk categories, needing ventilation, Britain's going to find itself running out of ventilators very quickly. So Mr. Hancock has urged UK manufacturers, even car manufacturers and others, to switch production to ventilators. He said very clearly over the weekend in a barrage of TV interviews and statements that there will be no end to the number of ventilators that they will buy. If manufacturers make them, the UK will buy them, he said. There will be no end to the need for the ventilators. Again, alarming, but something that they wish to address through manufacturing. And in terms of hospital beds and room in hospitals, there's also talk about emergency legislation coming into place so that the government will be able to requisition rooms in private hospitals for the NHS, and also possibly transforming empty hotels and the like into emergency hospitals so that they can be almost like field hospitals for those who might need treatment.
And Jonathan, we've really seen a number of European countries introduce extremely harsh measures, and of course right here in Israel also. Tell me, why is it that the UK hasn't followed that lead, and do you believe perhaps after this meeting this afternoon, which is set to be held, that, you know, some harsher measures may come into play there?
Well, the government said all along that they do have harsher measures up their sleeve, but they don't want to impose them too early, because they recognise that isolating, for example, older people is an extremely tough thing to ask them to do, especially as it may go on, some briefings have said, for as long as 4 months. So to ask the over 70s to isolate themselves totally from the rest of society for 4 months is a big ask. They say starting it too early means that they will come out of isolation too early, and that might mean that the peak is not properly flattened or extended, which is what they're trying to do in order to maximize the number of people who could be effectively treated in hospitals. Treatments, of course, are still relatively ineffective for COVID-19, and that's another area in which all health systems across the globe are battling to come up with new ways to treat those who need to be treated in intensive care. The UK is no different in that regard. So they are suggesting that in the coming weeks, over 70s may be asked to stay at home in total isolation because they're at a higher risk, and others who perhaps are at high risk will be asked to do the same. But for now, it's still not the advice. But as things seem to get faster and faster, it's quite possible that we'll be hearing more about that today or in the coming daily briefings, and that before long, Britain's over 70s population may indeed be asked to keep themselves away from everybody else.
And Jonathan, I'm sure you'll bring us up to speed as soon as these new measures have been announced.